And thank you for both being patient and being here, Congressman.
Oh, thanks for having me, Lou.
A terrific book, terrific ideas. I love the way you get right out there and express yourself declaratively on important values and approaches. It's just terrific. And by the way, we put it up on the book is up on the homepage of LouDobbs.com. So you can click on that or go to Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble, wherever you want, and check out the book.
Well, I don't think it's at Barnes & Noble. I think only senators get that.
Is that? Oh, we've already got Senate envy, Congressman? Oh, my.
No.
Such
envy
misplaced envy.
Facts. You got to have hair and be an octogenarian.
Well, I'm trying to think of all of the exceptions to that, but as you will. You've tackled a number of important issues in the book. Interestingly to me, going as well after the issue of globalization. And what is your perspective? We've always had international trade. I'm sometimes at an intellectual loss, as I am so often with many issues, to understand the difference between international trade and globalization. What would you say is the difference?
I don't think that, there was a fundamental shift in trade policy. In the past, under traditional trade theory, if one country had a comparative advantage making a product, they would make it. You would make the product that you had a comparative advantage making, and you would trade, and each side would benefit. What we've seen now is we've shifted into trading entire workforces.
Yep.
And entire economic arrangements. And that is what I think has caused much of the problems that we have today. And I would argue that in the age of globalization, when you can purchase a good or service anywhere in the world in the palm of your hand with a push of a button, and that has made this shift in trade very detrimental to Americans. It's made it very detrimental to people being exploited in the third world in places like communist, or even in countries like communist China. Mm-hmm. So what I think has happened, Lou, is that we've seen the vertical top-down model of a corporation that we used to understand to be, think GM 1970s, 1950s,
right.
And it's become horizontal consumer-driven. We know that in the age of the Internet, things are consumer-driven. We know that there's more choices in people's hands than ever. And what we're seeing now is the failure of government to recognize that and become citizen-driven. It remains the top-down bureaucracy that it grew up to be during the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And I think in many ways that's part of the problems that we're seeing in Wisconsin and elsewhere.
Yeah, you mentioned Wisconsin, if we may. I think, as I've been saying on this broadcast for some time, I believe the conflict between public sector unions and state, local, and federal government will be the defining conflict in domestic policy of our era, because it is so inextricably involved and indeed causal to the issue of debt that it's unavoidable. What do you think?
Well, I come from Detroit. As you know, Lou, we saw our private sector labor unions have to make very difficult decisions so that their companies could survive here and have a chance to compete in the global economy. And the distinction that I think that you were making to your caller previous to this was a very good one. The private sector spends what it makes. The government spends what it takes. And that creates an inherent inequity in many of the issues that we're seeing out there, such as Wisconsin and elsewhere. Because in a globalized economy with everything getting more nimble, more accountable, more competitive, if the government continues to think that it has large multinational corporations or large bases of manufacturing upon which it can continue to draw huge streams of revenue, those days are gone.
Yeah, and I sympathize and frankly agree with Pat, though, on one issue which he did not articulate, but I think he was suggesting, and that is the working man and woman in this country, particularly the middle class working man and woman in this country, right now has been put into, as you suggest when talking about trade relationships, but the working middle class in this country has been put into sharp competition with the cheapest labor in the world. And when we talk about competitiveness or productivity or competitive advantage, in nearly every instance in which I've been able to evaluate, whether it be China, Romania, whether it be Mexico, what it all comes down to is the lowest wage environment brutalizes the American middle class and wins. That's not competitiveness. That is not superior productivity. That is low wage advantage, period.
Well, I would agree with that. That's why I believe free trade with free nations on an equitable footing. When we talk about places like communist China, you're talking about a country where their citizens cannot, through political means, express their wishes, express their hopes and desires, and actually effectuate change within their government to improve worker standards or to meet some of the standard of living that the United States has. So when we talk about the exploitation of the third world, I would agree with you there, and that the United States is very short-sighted. Because when we start to build up countries like communist China with our money and we start to devastate our manufacturing base, and when you start to realize what they have in store for us, you realize that the folly of trying to do that to get $5 off on a shirt.
Right. And I have said for some time, and it's why I was delighted to read your views on international trade, on the so-called free trade as it's styled by those who who are simply looking for low-cost advantage and damn the consequences. And by the way, I'm talking about corporate leaders as well as political leaders. I think you have it exactly right. And I can't understand why so few of your conservative brothers and sisters in Congress and previously in the White House, if they were conservative, can't understand what you articulate so clearly.
Well, it's a very simple point to me. If free trade doesn't exist and protectionism doesn't work, you have to find a way to strike equitable agreements with trading partners that are advantageous to both of you. That's what businesses do all the time. And those who still say that somehow there's free trade, I would argue, then why do we have a U.S. trade rep to negotiate these things? They could write them on a cocktail napkin if it was free trade.
Absolutely. And also, and if it were free, why have we ran 38 consecutive years of trade deficits and run up a $7 trillion external debt? I mean, it's stunning what the national media, I will be kind, permits the ideologues to get away with. It's a terrific book, Congressman. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I recommend it highly to everyone listening. The book is Seize Freedom: American Truths and Renewal in a Chaotic Age. What chaos? I ask you, what chaos? Congressman, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Lou.
All the best. And again, seriously, a terrific book. Thaddeus McCotter, Seize Freedom. And check out LouDobbs.com. You can click on the book right there and buy as many as